Hello, everyone, and welcome to Parallel Magic, the science fiction and fantasy book show. I'm Kate M. Colby, joined as always by Jonas Lee, and today we'll be discussing Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. How's it going today, Jonas?
It's good. It's midweek. This is, for anybody that's listening, this is the second time we're going through this book because the first time technology gods decided to shun our offering and totally ruin the audio file. So we're going through Annihilation a second time. But that's okay because now we're really up to speed on it all and we got it down pat, right?
Yes. Well, and ironically enough, this was one of the shortest episodes we've ever done the first time we recorded it, and I anticipate it to be that way again. So it'll be a nice, easy mishap. If something was going to go wrong, at least it went wrong on this one and not a book we had lots of passionate things to say about. So
Yeah.
if that gives you any indication of what's to come in our enthusiasm level.
Yeah, don't expect much. So, God, now I feel like I'm stepping on my own toes here. So, what what are you drinking today? How's that? Let's start with an easy one.
All right, well, since we're going with this whole honesty thing, originally I was drinking a Mount Gay rum and Coke, and that is what you will see on social media if you follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. But today I just got back from running errands, and it's pretty warm outside in Northern California here, so I'm just down in the water and rehydrating.
That's nice. I myself.
What about you?
Yeah, I just I grabbed a squirt from work and I just threw a splash of vodka in there just to pretend I'm an adult. And
Ooh, nice.
that's basically where I'm at. It's also just kind of a nice crisp drink. And it's not really hot here though, which is actually quite the phenomenon. It's usually like in the 90s in August around here, but it's a beautiful 75 degrees outside right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's like perfect.
I know. So, this book. Well, let's read the description, then we'll get into the book. How's that?
Perfect.
All right. Area X has been cut off from the rest of the continent for decades. Nature has reclaimed the last vestiges of human civilization. The first expedition returned with reports of pristine, Edenic landscape. All the members of the second expedition committed suicide. Third expedition died in a hail of gunfire as its members turned on one another. The members of the 11th expedition returned as shadows of their former selves, and within months of their return, all had died of aggressive cancer. This is the 12th expedition. Their group is made up of 4 women, an anthropologist, a surveyor, a psychologist, the de facto leader, and our narrator, a biologist. Their mission is to map the terrain and collect specimens to record all their observations, scientific and otherwise, of their surroundings and of one another, and above all, to avoid being contaminated by Area X itself. They arrive expecting the unexpected, and Area X delivers. They discover a massive topographic anomaly and life forms that surpass understanding. But it's the surprises that came across the border with them and the secrets the expedition members are keeping from one another that change everything. Whoo-wee!
Dun, dun, dun.
That was a mouthful. And mystery.
All right, so before we dive into this, I just want to remind everybody that we are now doing spoilers right from the get-go. So if for some reason you're listening to this and you haven't read Annihilation yet, or you don't want it spoiled for you, this is your chance to pause, go read the book, or watch the movie, and come back later. But now we're going to dive into it. So, Jonas, do you want to kick us off with your thoughts?
Oh, God, why not? This book, as I guess I should say, it was well written. I mean, the writing style was nice. Everything that you really want in a book was going for it in the beginning. I think it just started to be, I think the best way of putting it, it was pretty vanilla all the way through. And there was just no like real peaks and valleys, and what there was, it was just kind of lackluster for me. there was, the antagonist in this was really just unclear throughout the entire book for me, as far as like, am I supposed to be wondering about this person? Oh, okay, that person's gone now. Now what about this person? Okay, that person's gone now. And then this person, okay, that person's pretty much gone now. And then you wonder if it's the forest, and there's really nothing to put my finger on and go, that's what we're working towards. That's what we're going at. And I think that alone is what kind of did the book in for me. I mean, I still carried on because of the writing and the idea of it. I think the just overall presence of the book wasn't enough for me to care too much. So it wasn't like I hated the book. It was just more like I was, ambivalent. What about you?
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. The interesting thing for me was when I picked this book up at the library and I started reading it, it really read to me like a classic science fiction novel.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that in the cover is interesting, but it's like illustrative and I don't know, it kind of looked a little dated. And then when I was actually reading it, it's really description heavy. And don't get me wrong, the description is beautiful. Like if you are someone who goes in for like nature and world building and all of that, then you'll definitely like the exposition in this book. However, we don't really get a lot from the characters. So from the outset, we don't get any character names. They're just
titles.
They refer to each other, by their occupation. So like biologist, surveyor, whatever. And I'm okay with that because, I understand it's a professional mission. They're trying to keep from getting emotionally attached, whatever. But the fact is like that carries through in the way the characters treat each other. It carries through in the first person narration of the biologist who's our protagonist. I mean, we learn things about her, and she talks about her past a little bit and our motivations for coming to Area X. But it all just, I don't know, it kind of falls flat. Like, I feel like I don't know her very well. I feel like I can't trust her because we don't know if Area X has driven her mad or if she was kind of crazy before coming here, because she obviously like is kind of antisocial and doesn't like people, and I think a little more traumatized by her husband's death than she kind of lets on. So I just had a really hard time connecting with the characters. And then also I feel like, the book wasn't that long.
No.
But it wasn't really slow to read, but it just felt like not a lot happened. Like, they go into Area X, and they find this tunnel/tower. They go down, they investigate. Eventually, they find the monster that's writing the weird words on the walls. But, like, we never get any definitive answers on what the monster is. And we never get any definitive answers on, like, which of the other characters were bad, or like what this company's goal is that's sending them in. And like, I know it's a trilogy and I should just sit down and be patient and wait for the next 2 books. But like, at the same time, I need some questions answered. And I feel like this book not only didn't answer my questions, but it just raised more and just left me totally hanging.
Yeah, I think it did the same thing for me. There wasn't enough of a hook to make me care about the other books. Like, usually in a trilogy, it can end with an uplift where you're kind of like, ooh, I wonder what happens. This one, it's more like, okay, there's 2 other ones. Do I care? And I basically came down to like, nope, I really don't. It's just, I think there's that disconnect as far as, and if they were doing the disconnect in the same way that they were trying to portray the biologist, because she's sort of disconnected from the rest of society, essentially, because she cares mostly about biology, and that's her thing, and that's what she likes, and she doesn't really seem to care about her husband too much. And it was more, if they're trying to reflect that, I guess that's a good job, but it's somebody that I don't care about, so why would I keep reading? Because you have to make something sort of dynamic where you want to know what happens next, where you want that story to keep carrying on, where you want those characters to make it or not. And this, it was just kind of like, I just want to know what Area X is, but beyond that, I don't really care.
Right. Well, and I've looked at the second and third books, and it looks like they're from the perspectives of new characters,
Yeah.
which makes sense because at the end of this book, the biologist is just like, all right, well, I'm taking off for the island where my husband may or may not have ventured, and he may or may not be alive, but probably not, you know. And so knowing that we're not going to get any more of her perspective, on one hand, I'm okay with that because I didn't really connect with her. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, wait now. A lot of these questions are hers, and are you ever going to answer them for me? Or is the next character just going to stumble upon her body and be like, oh, look, it's the biologist from this expedition who's dead now?
How about that?
You know? Right? And yeah, I think too, I was trying to like pull some deeper meaning out of this because that's what I attempt to do with everything I read. And there's a lot to be said for like nature reclaiming territory from human civilization and the way that like nature and human civilization can merge together. And so even if you take that spin on it and view like Area X as the protagonist and the thing you're supposed to be sympathetic to, because it's like, it's regaining wildness and thwarting the humans and whatnot, because, we're the evil causers of climate change, which, is true. It's still like, well, I can't even root for the wilderness because I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's maybe alien or just evolution, or if it's really bad, or like how it started. Like I have no...
Who do we root for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like you were saying, you don't even know who the bad guy is. Like, is it the psychologist who was hypnotizing them, or was she hypnotizing them for their own good, and like worse shit would have happened had she not done that?
Yeah.
Or was she just crazy too and another victim of the wilderness? And like, was the wilderness even bad, or was it like enlightening them? I mean, like, it's like we're standing in the middle of a forest and the compass needle is just spinning like crazy and I don't know what to do with it. Like maybe I wasn't smart enough for this book. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's parts to where I kind of went, this might be, maybe I'm just too lowbrow to get the meaning behind this, or maybe the meaning is just it's just the art itself. And in that case, I'm like, I don't really care. So I guess there's so many different angles that you could take it, but all of them for me just kind of lead back to a place where I like you said, the needle's spinning and I don't know which way to go. And yeah, it lost some of the appeal for me. And I'm curious about the movie now, just to see, because I think the movie will just be visually dynamic, but I don't know that the story will be there either. I'm not entirely certain, but it seems like they took a little bit of a different tangent to make it work for a movie. So I still haven't seen it yet, but
I haven't either, but I do have more faith in the movie just because in the trailers, Natalie Portman, who plays the biologist, her husband is still alive, whereas at the beginning of the book, he's already dead, or at least believed to be dead, because he may or may not still be out in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Unanswered question. But so in the movie, it seems like she goes into Area X with the goal of figuring out how to save her husband and like bring back some kind of cure or answer for why he's become ill. In which case, I think it would be much more dynamic because we have a protagonist who has an emotional connection to someone. She has a goal that a lot of people can get on board with. We would all want to save our loved ones. And like that's something to drive her and point the compass needle. Whereas in the book, she just goes into Area X and she's like, well, my goals are to study the nature because I've always been fascinated with nature, which is like, good for you, lady, but doesn't really give us much of a plot. And then, and as a side note, I'm kind of interested in what my husband might have seen here and how he died, but our marriage was like on the rocks anyway, so I don't really care. Like I want to go for myself, and it's like,
yeah, there's like a strange scientific coldness to her in that way. And
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the whole thing just kind of made me go, all right. I think I was just more like, I'm already on this ride. I'm just gonna see where it goes, and then I'll get off like I'm on one of those little street trolleys. It's like anytime now, I'll just hop on off and not even give a crap. So yeah,
Yeah.
that I wish there was like more things I could say about it that stood out well. But yeah, mostly I'm just the things that stood out are the things that are just kind of meh, meh.
I don't know. I mean, it had some high points for me.
Like what?
I think the world itself, I think, was really cool. Like, I'm irritated that we didn't get a lot of explanation about it.
Yeah.
But he created some really interesting images. Like this idea of the words on the wall in the tower slash tunnel thing being made out of these glowing microscopic organisms that were all grouped together, and like the fact that there was this big like amorphous blob thing that was writing them that may or may not have been made out of the lighthouse keeper. Like, some of these images were really cool and different. Like, I've never read anything like that before. I mean, it takes some imagination to come up with something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the writing itself was really well done. He's describing some weird stuff, but yet I always had a great mental picture of it in my head. I was never confused. There wasn't a lot of action, but when there was moments of action, I was never confused with what was going on. I never had to stop and reread things. And despite the fact that like not a lot really happened and a lot of it was in the biologist's head, the book didn't feel super slow to me. And I mean, it could have felt totally glacial, but I still feel like I read it at a moderate pace, and I wasn't dreading coming back to it. Like, I wasn't super excited like, oh, I've got to see what happens next, but I was at least like, oh, okay, well, let's keep going.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give it that. I mean, I think the writing is what saved it in whole, like in total. If I had to go off of just plot alone, I think if a lesser author wrote this, I would probably it would have been more of a struggle. But I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you're right. The writing and the descriptions and things like that are great. It was just there wasn't a whole lot moving it along, and unless you just kind of like to stop and smell the roses while reading the entire book, for me, I should just say it wasn't my specific cup of tea. I don't like tea,
Yeah.
but specific cup of whatever.
Squirt and vodka.
Squirting vodka. So that all being on the table, then what was your grade for it? Or what is your grade for it, I should say?
Well, I decided to go with 6 out of 10 shots because I think, that's a solid 3-star, and I feel like that's what the book was for me. It had a really interesting concept, good world building, great writing, and, the character wasn't, she wasn't the most fleshed out character ever, but like I did understand her, even though I didn't necessarily connect with her or enjoy spending time with her. I at least kind of got the sense of her. So, and it was like fine. It was just fine.
It
And
was okay.
some people will say like, oh, okay, well that's fair, and other people will be like, oh my god, that's the most damning thing you can say of a book, was that it was just fine. But that's where I'm sitting with it. And I might go on and read the rest of the trilogy, but if I do, it's not going to be out of like passion or excitement. It's going to be like
Pure curiosity.
partly the fact, yeah, it's going to be partly curiosity because like I have a ton of questions I want answered, and it's going to be partly the fact that like I'm really like anal in this way and have to finish series. I'm weird about it. I really like to do it. So yeah, anyway, that's my rating. Where'd you come down?
Well, on Goodreads, I gave it like the 3 out of 5, but I think that was more of a roundup. So in a 10 scale system, I gave it 5 out of 10, just because I have to try. If I just went off of one thing or another, I think it'd be a little bit more dynamic one way or another. But I have to approach every rating we do here with, was it as good as the last rating I gave a book? And I think the last book I
Mm.
re-rated was Man in the High Castle, and I gave it a little bit higher rating than that. And I can't say that this book is better than that book, even though it's kind of, I mean, it's kind of in the same-ish genre. I mean, science fiction, but yeah, the writing was great. I listened to the audiobook, I should say. The audiobook portion of it, the
Mm.
girl doing that was great. It was just one of those books where I could get lost, and when I came back to it, I was in the exact same spot where I was like, oh, it's like nothing's really changed. So, oh, cool. I could just zone out and come back and be like, what happened? And I go back and listen to it like 30 minutes and go, I didn't miss out on anything. So the progression of the plot, something that kind of kept me hooked in, coming back, other than the obvious need to finish the book or for finishing this book for our purposes, I probably wouldn't do it, and I probably wouldn't go on and read the trilogy just for the fact of there's other books out there that I do want to get into or at least give a try for. So sorry, I got a 5 out of 10 for that one.
That's okay. We can't like every book we read.
I can't.
That's
why
we're not going to.
No.
Yes.
But that's what you have to do. You have to try different books out, see what you actually like, and that way you can become old like me and know what it is that you do like, and know that I don't want that kind of shit anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Old like you.
Old like me. Old man Winter. Sitting on my rocking chair.
Yes, and listeners, if you blatantly disagree with us and you think this book is fantastic, or you're on the other side, you think it's terrible, go ahead, leave us a comment on our website, in our Goodreads group, or on one of our social media pages. All the links will be below in the show notes. And, let us know why. Because I always love to hear about people who have different opinions on books than me. It helps me view them in a new perspective, and sometimes it changes my opinion, and other times it just gives me a cool insight into another interpretation of the book. So always feel free to share your opinions, whether or not you agree with us.
Absolutely. We love hearing from people, and just, yeah, we're in a group, so we're doing this somewhat for you, but mostly just so we can talk to each other. And we like to hear what each other has to say when we'd like to hear from you too. So yeah. Well, crap. That is still pretty short, isn't it?
It is, but I think that's good. Everybody can take a nice little break from their lives and talk books and have a drink and get right back to it.
Absolutely. And next time we are going into The Giver, and that should be interesting. I always loved that book. I think I've read it twice now, so.
Ooh, yes, that's one that I read as a kid or adolescent, and I really, really loved it. So I'm excited to look at it with fresh eyes as an adult and see if
it's always dangerous
I think it still holds up.
As an adult, though, versus childhood.
Oh yeah.
I've been finding that out a lot lately. Like the movies I loved as a child, when I go back and watch them, like, oh my god, what the hell's going on with this? Like, my daughter's not going to like this at all like I thought she would. But, yeah, books have a way of changing. I think everybody has a way of changing as far as perspective on different things that you used to love and now you might not love it. But this was one of those books I read, I think, 15 years ago, maybe. But at that point, I thought it was great. So when I read it about 5 years later, still great. So we'll see. We'll come back to this.
Absolutely. Alrighty, well, if we don't have anything else to say on Annihilation, I say let's wrap this episode up.
Absolutely. I'll raise the glass, say a good old cheers to you, and on to the next one.
Cheers!